Hey everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at the feature race on a fun 12 race card on Saturday at Golden Gate Fields in Northern California. It is race 11, the grade 3 San Francisco Mile, going, of course, the 1 mile distance on the turf course. 9 runners signed on for this race, and it's a pretty intriguing field. Some shippers coming up from Southern California, some horses coming off layoffs, a lot to just dissect in this race. Let's take a look at the field signed on for the San Francisco Mile. And we've got some runners that I think are going to take money coming out of graded stakes races in Southern California. The number 9 Dicey Mochara is among them. The number 2 Belnikov, a horse that has achieved graded stakes success in the past, and even an old class horse like Flavius and Bob and Jackie, runners like them, getting up there in age, but could also take some money in this field. So a lot going on in this race, and we're going to try to go through as many of the contenders as possible. I think I'm going to talk about everybody except the big long shot, the number 7 Il Bellator. But before we get to those main contenders, let's check out the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And it does seem like there's a little bit of speed signed on, particularly in the form of the number 4 Bob and Jackie and the number 6 Lamplighter Jack. Both of them seem like horses that want to be forwardly placed. Arguably, Lamplighter Jack is a bit more of a confirmed front-running type. He's coming off a gate-to-wire score in his last start, so maybe his connections will be more aggressive. But Bob and Jackie also has done some of his better running towards the front end, so I don't think it's going to be a wildly fast pace, but I at least do believe it's going to be competitive up front. And I will be interested to see how far back the number 9 Dicey Mochara is in the early stages of this race. He's shown towards the back of the pack on the pace projector, and part of the reason for that is that he's a horse that's coming out of some longer races, some slower paced races. So he's not usually one that's trying to make that last to first rush, but going the 1 mile distance, he could be behind the 8 ball a little bit. The good news is he does have that LP flag on the pace projector, the best late pace rating in the field. Let's take a look at the Timeform US finish projector, one of the new features in Timeform US, the finish as predicted by the Timeform US algorithm. And this is just a visual representation of the Timeform US power picks that you'd be familiar with from the classic version of Timeform US. Just the added benefit of showing the relationships between the runners at the wire. And you do see that horse with the late pace flag, the number 9 Dicey Mochara, shown getting up to win this race. The big question for him is that turn back in distance. I'll talk about that in some more depth in just a little bit, but some others who have that back class from Southern California, like the number 8 Flavius and the number 4 Bob and Jackie, also shown doing well in this race. So we'll see how it plays out on the racetrack, and we'll see if I agree with this Timeform US finish projector as we go through the field. And I'll take most of these runners in post position order, beginning with the number 1 Tarantino. Let's take a look at his last race when he was second in an optional claiming affair at Santa Anita. This was a good effort for him. Definitely a step in the right direction. Second off the layoff for Northern California-based trainer Ed Moger. And I like the way that he's finishing gamely between horses here to get up for second. And this was a high-level race. The third place finisher, Flashiest, had done some good work in graded stakes races in prior starts. So Tarantino faced some nice runners last time. I don't think this is some gigantic step up in class for him. Some people might be turned off by his inconsistency, but felt like something went wrong towards the end of last season. Needed his first start off the layoff that seemed like a prep when he came off the layoff at Golden Gate Fields over the Tapeta surface back in January. So maybe one that's moving in the right direction now. I saw my colleague Steve Anderson reporting on this race that Ed Moger believes that he's a horse that's had some foot troubles in the past, seems to be doing better over those issues now. So maybe we can expect another good effort from the number 1 Tarantino in the San Francisco Mile. The number 2 is Belnikov, and we're going to go 2 races back in his past performances to check out his narrow loss in the Santa Anita Mathis Mile. This was back on December 26th, opening day of that Santa Anita winter meet last year, and gosh, I thought he should have won this race. I mean, doesn't it look like he's going to win this race as they're coming to mid-stretch? He's ranging up on the outside. We know this horse has a strong finish, and he's just never able to get by that horse to his inside. One more bid, missing by a nose there. So that was a slight negative for me. One more bid did come back to run pretty well in his next start, the Pegasus World Cup Turf. So maybe he just ran into a horse that was doing really well over the winter, but that was a little bit of a negative for me that Belnikov couldn't get the job done there, and then came off the layoff last time in the grade 1 Kilrow Mile. And I don't know what his excuse was that day. Sure, the company was tough. He was 8-1 in that race, but he really had no stretch kick whatsoever and was eased towards the end of that race, just didn't fire his best shot. Now they're setting their sights a little bit lower, trying this Northern California grade 3, just getting mixed signals as to how this horse is doing right now. And he's one that needs some pace to close into. He's probably the deepest of deep closers in this field. So we'll see how the pace shapes up on the front end, but just getting some mixed signals about how Balnikov is coming into this race. And he does feel like one that could take some money in here. The number 3 is Rio King, and he is one of the Golden Gate-based runners, and certainly in good form right now, seeking his 4th consecutive victory, but he'll have to do so switching back over to the turf course. All of his recent success has come over the Tapeta surface at Golden Gate, and he's definitely done well in those races. You could see that 119 Timeform US speed figure for his last race. Now, that kind of number suggests that he might fit in here, but do note the P designation next to the speed figure, and that indicates that this is a race that got a big upgrade due to a very slow pace. And you could see it fits for this horse because he was the one that was making that last to first run into that blue color-coded slow pace last time at Golden Gate. So I think he deserves the upgrade. The upgrade just feels really big, up to a 119 for this runner. So we'll see if he can truly earn that kind of number against the tougher field this time out. But my colleague Craig Mulkowski does put in those letter codes next to the speed figures to indicate some additional context for numbers like that seem like outliers, and that definitely applies to a Rio King. The number 4 is Bob and Jackie. Let's take a look at his last race when he was 3rd in the Grade 3 American at Santa Anita. He set the pace this day, just got a little bit tired towards the end and could not hold off the streaking Exalted, who I think is now 3 for 3 since getting on the turf this winter at Santa Anita. So no fault losing to that foe. And also the runner that was second in here, Irideo, has also done some nice running in stakes company in the past. So I think that Bob and Jackie kept good company that day. Seemed like he finally took a step forward, 3rd off the layoff, seeing a better performance that looked more like some of the efforts that we had seen from him earlier in his career. He's obviously a horse that has had some long layoffs at different stages of his career now as a 7-year-old. So Bob and Jackie, capable on his best day. We'll see how the pace shapes up with that other speed in the real Lamplighter Jack. I wonder if he still has that competitive fire to gut out a win these days, but I do think he's one that you can consider for all the slots, especially underneath. The number 5 is Tesoro. He is another Northern California-based runner, and he's had limited experience on the turf in his career. I do like his debut on the turf, which he won at Golden Gate last June. That was a pretty, or I should say last April, that was a pretty impressive effort when he got that 117 time from US speed figure. I liked the way that he was able to battle back on the inside of arrival after getting passed in upper stretch. Since then, his form has been a little bit up and down. He went back to the dirt probably not his preferred surface. He had a little bit of traffic trouble in that Wicker Stakes at Del Mar 3 back, but I didn't think he had some major excuse that day. Then didn't seem to handle the marathon distance 2 back after a slow start. Now coming off a layoff. This is a barn that does very well in Northern California. It just feels like this horse is a little bit ambitiously placed coming back off the long break. The number 6 is Lamplighter Jack. Let's take a look at his most recent victory down at Santa Anita in a starter allowance race. So obviously not facing the quality of competition that he's going to be meeting in this Grade 3 event, but you had to like what you saw here, the way that he's winning this race, drawing off at the end by 3 lengths. The runner-up in this field, who's also well clear of the rest, Lovesick Blues, did come back to win again, earning a respectable speed figure, actually showing some slight improvement off this race. So Lamplighter Jack definitely seems like a horse that will be a contender if he's able to repeat that most recent performance. However, he did have a perfect setup that day, setting slow fractions. Again, you see those blue color-coded pace figures in the Timeform US PPs, that rising pace figure line. So that's the kind of flow that really does favor a front runner. We'll see if he's able to work out that same kind of setup here and do so against a much deeper field. So I think there are certainly some questions that Lamplighter Jack has to answer, and maybe he pulls in some support off that visually impressive victory last time out. Like I said at the start, I'll skip over the number 7. He's just a big price in this race that's a little hard to make a case for. The number 8 is Flavius. I want to take a look at his past performances because there are some interesting things going on with Flavius in this race. This is a horse who was in Chad Brown's stable going back to 2020, 2021, and was in great form during that time, running well in a number of tough races, winning the Lure Stakes at Saratoga back in 2021, leading the entire way, then ran in a lucrative stakes at Kentucky Downs, where he faded a bit at the end, but didn't get the best trip that day, going wide. was apparently privately sold, now switched to Mike Maker, then to Richard Baltis. Now he's with George Papapadromou. So a lot of changes for Flavius over the past couple of seasons. And also, he's coming off a lengthy layoff for this race. I do want to point out, though, his last couple of races are not quite as bad as they seem. He was clearly overmatched when he tried that Pegasus World Cup Turf 2 back. And then last time out, his race obviously happened over a year ago in 2021. I'm sorry, in March of 2022. But his trip in that Frank Kilroy was a little difficult. He was off slowly, then was wide around the first turn, very wide around the second turn. Actually did some running to finish sixth, splitting that field. So not nearly as bad as the result indicates. And I looked up the stats for trainer George Papapadromou coming off the layoff, and we could show this in DRF Formulator. 180 days or more, so basically 6 months or more in turf races. The percentage is not that high, 6 for 38, 16%, but there have been plenty of big prices in this sample, and he's done fairly well with them. I would say that he's overperformed in general with the horses in this sample, a $3.52 ROI, and even some big prices finishing second. So I would expect a good effort from Flavius coming off the layoff. He certainly has a strong string of workouts coming back for this race, so definitely an intriguing runner making his return in the San Francisco Mile. The final runner to talk about is the number 9, Dicey Mochara. We'll take a look at his race back when he won the Grade 2 San Gabriel. And a couple of reasons why I want to highlight this performance. Well, it was the last race that he won, obviously, but also it was the shortest race that he competed in recent starts, going the mile and an eighth distance. Dicey Mochara, generally a horse that's best going 10 furlongs. He can go as far as a mile and a half. He really has not gone as short as a mile in a pretty long time. His last race actually going a mile came not on the turf, but over the Tapeta surface at Golden Gate all the way back in May of last year. So it remains to be seen what we're going to get from Dicey Mochara on the turnback. His form is obviously good. He's been competing in Grade 2, Grade 3 events in Southern California and has been competitive in those races. I will say the marathon division in Southern California is not as strong as it's ever been, so maybe he's been taking advantage of some weaker spots. And his last race in the Charles Whittingham, I didn't think he had a big excuse to lose that race. He got to set moderate fractions up front and just got run down by a horse that looked a little bit inferior on the way in. So I don't feel like Dicey Mochara is the most formidable horse coming in here, and he does have a question to answer with regard to the turn back and distance. So just some reasons to maybe be somewhat skeptical at a short price. Let's throw out my picks for this San Francisco Mile. I'm going to go with that intriguing horse coming off the layoff, the number 8 Flavius. I think that his form prior to the layoff is a bit better than some people might give him credit for, and I trust in George Papapadromou to have him ready, especially off that strong work tab that he shows. I do also want to use the number 1 Tarantino. He could be a bigger price in this race, and I think his last race signals that he might be heading in the right direction. So mostly the number 1 and the number 8 for me in the San Francisco Mile on Saturday at Golden Gate Fields. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.